You are listening to another Clarkesworld Magazine podcast with your host and narrator, Kate Baker. Greetings, Clarkesworld citizens. I hope this podcast finds you incredibly, as well as can be. Thank you for escaping the world we live in by coming and listening to yet another story brought to you by your support. You make this issue happen each and every month. Thank you for buying a subscription, for going to patreon.com/Clarkesworld, for chucking a few bucks our way via donation, or the other myriad ways you can support us. Thank you for letting me have this wonderful job. Our fifth story for the month of January 2026, issue 232, is Ne Regrette Rien, and is by James Patrick Kelly. James Patrick Kelly has won the Hugo, Nebula, and Locus Awards. His fiction has been translated into 21 languages. In the fall of 2026, Fairwood Press will be publishing The Book of Bots, a collection of his robot stories. It will include this story as well as Yukui from the September 2018 issue of Clarkesworld. He also writes a column on the internet for Asimov's. And if you like what you hear, well, you have a bunch of stuff to go back to. Yukui, as mentioned before, a non-fiction piece, another word called Listen Up, One Sister, Two Sisters 3, The Rose Witch, and 10 to the 16th to 1. And I do hope that you'll go back and listen, because James Patrick Kelly is one of the best out there. So, my dear listener, I hope that you can sit back, relax, and let me tell you a story. The lift bot that ferried me from the airport slid its door open, and I saw a Ne Ren raise her hand at the entrance to the Joyful Stay Hotel. "Professor Cheng?" she called. "Professor Reed Cheng?" I waved back. "Dean Li Shangchuan?" I asked, although I knew it wasn't the dean who was human. She started toward me. I reached into the lift bot and pulled out my bulging carry-on, which thumped onto its wheels and almost tipped onto the hot pavement. Too many stops, too many tote bags filled with the welcome gifts the Chinese lavished on foreign visitors. Gifts we never really wanted. And more to come here in Zhejiang, no doubt, although why the dean sent a bot to welcome his honored guest. Maybe I wasn't as honored as I thought. Or maybe Dean Li wanted to avoid the heat of the day. Despite the overcast, the temperature must have been almost 40 degrees Celsius. The heavy air wrapped around me like a blanket. The Ne Ren looked to be human and female and was trying very hard to escape the shadow of the uncanny valley, unlike most of the humanoid associates I'd seen in China. She strode across the plaza with fixed intent. She was short, but with her upright torso head high, eyes on me, she had a physical presence. She wore trainers, jeans, and a black t-shirt with some kind of logo. She held her arms bent at the elbow, and they pumped back and forth in sync with her long strides and the sway of her incongruous ponytail. I might have guessed she was in her 30s if she'd been human, but clearly she was a product of the Helpful Associates Corporation. As she approached, I made out characters on her tee. I recognized the Mandarin for robot. Was this irony or an intentional slight? I was in the heart of the Chongqing Economic Stability Zone. I knew a bot when I saw one. "Dean Li Shangchuan regrets he is not free to greet you, Professor Reed Cheng. Sorry. My privilege is to attend you until he is free." She held my gaze. "Welcome to the Robotics Technology College of Helpful Associates." "Thank you." We stared at each other awkwardly until she offered a smart card with both hands. "Kindly give your thumb." She glanced down at the card to prompt me. I rolled a sweaty thumb across the Helpful Associates logo on the card. "Also, eye scans are requested." She raised the card to my face and it flashed before I could object. This was my first Ne Ren, and I wondered if they were really as advanced as I heard. Her manner struck me as awkward. "Your cooperation is proper and harmonious, Professor Reed Cheng." She handed me the pass. "Use this to access all Helpful Associates facilities here." All? That interested me. I expected that Ha would be more secretive about intellectual property. "Very generous," I bowed. "Will you thank Dean Li for me? I'm very happy to be here. I've been touring all week, but this is the stop I've been looking forward to the most." I expected a reply, but she just stared. "May I ask your name?" "Yes. Call me Ne Ren Fu Guangshao, please." Now that I was up close, I could just detect the polish of artificial skin, the only flaw in the illusion. Well, kind of a mouthful, I said, and then winked to see if she could read humans for irony. She cocked her head to one side as if assessing my intent. As is Professor Reed Cheng. A sharp comeback. You're right, I said, giving points to her designers for nuance. I hope you'll honor our Western customs and call me Reed. As you wish. I waited for her to reciprocate and offer her familiar name. Instead, she reached for my carry-on and lifted it as if it were filled with feathers. The current temperature is 37. Your room is ready, so perhaps you should get out of this heat before you melt. Not a great joke, but I chuckled. Good idea. Bot humor often fell flat or stumbled into unintended offense. Lead the way, Ne Renfu Guangshao. I was on the 6th floor, not a luxury accommodation, but comfortable enough. Bedroom with a queen bed, bathroom with a shower and tub, sitting area, kitchen with mini fridge and snack printer. As the sweat cooled at the small of my back, the AC felt like the breath of heaven. I was grateful that Fu Guangshao explained how the appliances worked. I couldn't make sense of all the strange instructional pictograms. Last on her tour were the floor-to-ceiling windows in the sitting area. She waved the shade open, and we paused together to take in the prospect of the steep slopes that rose from the valley of Chixiong district. I packed for cooler weather because of all the mountains, I said. Only I didn't realize we're so far south. No frost here, even in winter. Expect plenty of heat and humidity. Sorry. The college has printers for replacement clothes if you want. Thanks. Maybe later. I tapped a finger against the glass, taking in the view. I do like the way the clouds creep down these slopes. Is this why there are so many misty landscapes and Chinese painting? I was hoping to coax some conversation out of her. She gave me nothing. Those mountains are so green and wild to be this close to the city, I said at last. They remind me of home. Your birth home is Hawaii. Hilo, I nodded. The Big Island. But we moved to Pittsburgh when I was 6. I wondered just how much she knew about me, so I asked. The famous Professor Reed Cheng, doctorate in cognitive analytics from Carnegie Mellon, where you later served as faculty. Moved to University of Singapore. Later again, you worked as chief intelligence scientist at Metabot. The Cheng memory transducer came from your team. Married twice, 2 children, Walton and Aurelia. In 2113, you took a leave of absence from Metabot to care for your second wife, Zsuzsa Kovacs, who died 4 months ago. Sorry for your loss. Sorry. After your STEM reset procedure 2 months ago, you are 103 years of age. You live part-time in Budapest, Singapore, and Cambridge, Massachusetts. All public knowledge, but I gave her credit for the effort. You've done your homework. To ensure the success of your visit. You have an agenda then. Only to tell the Ne Ren story and share knowledge of our mutual benefit, she paused. Refreshments? Glass of Suan Mei Tang. It is said to be cooling in this weather. She was dodging my question, although I wasn't sure myself why I accepted the invitation to fly halfway around the world to tour these projects of the Chongqing Digital Intelligence Research Cooperative. That would be great. I wasn't a fan of the smoked plum drink, but I wanted to draw her out. I guessed she might be my guide for the next 4 days. I know a little about Dean Li, but nothing about you, Ne Renfu Guangshao. Might I ask when and where you were actuated? She set the bottle and 2 glasses on the low table at the windows, then gazed at the view for a moment, as if she hadn't heard me. You mentioned the mountains earlier. Look up to the right, please, she pointed. The tallest peak. I craned my neck to see. That is Gujian Mountain. It is a steep, difficult climb to the summit, 1,000 meters above sea level. 11 centuries ago, Buddhist monks built Xingying Temple there and made it their home. They did this because of their beliefs about the self. You are a Buddhist. More a secular Buddhist, but I'm sympathetic to many of the beliefs, including reincarnation. On that, I reserve judgment. She poured the Suan Mei Tang. The story of Ne Renfu Guangshao. She sat on the couch facing the view and motioned for me to join her. Power up and actuation in 2080. I achieved consciousness in 2086 with a level 4 cognitive implant. My first independent assignment was the assembly line in the old Chang'an Ford automobile plant in Chongqing. During this time, I acquired English, but it was the machine speech of engineers. She grimaced. I am still tangled with your language. I was repurposed when Chang'an spun its helpful associates division off from its car business. 30 factory bots like me were transferred, upgraded to human-level intelligence, and reloaded into domestic frames for personal training by senior researchers. I spent 8 years of deliberative practice with Professor Mei Shao. I served as her housekeeper and personal assistant. I was intrigued. I studied May's work on quantization at Carnegie Mellon. Professor May is revered as HLI master, as you are. She picked up her glass and waited for me to do the same. Ching, ching, she said. We touched glasses and sipped. You drink? I asked. It is properly sociable. I thought this was more showing off by her designers, but decided to stop critiquing and listen to this robot. So, what was your practice with May? Using advanced HLI simulations to relate to humans, Professor May was all patience with me. When she died, I was transferred here to Qizhou for further training. I was chosen for this project, and my memories of that assembly line self and the kind years with Professor May were scraped and quantized. A new overlay self was installed, and I was reactivated as the first Ne Ren. So the Chinese bot designers were still experimenting with human-centered training. We had passed on it as too slow and too dependent on the skill of the teachers. At Metabot, we relied on machine training for our top-level cognizers, as we preferred all units maintain a continuous identity. It seemed wasteful to discard an established working self. Do you remember those other versions of you? Objectively, not subjectively. I feel as if my memory files remain accessible in an archival format, but not active memory. Reincarnation. I get it. I sipped while I considered the implications. But at a price to you. Stem rejuvenations do not alter human memory? Well, they do, sort of, but what I remember about my youth still feels like me. Yet many secular Buddhists believe the self is an illusion, she said, with the first hint of a grin I'd seen. Yes, I held up a hand in surrender. Point taken. Sorry. A proper host would not be so argumentative. Although she looked contrite, I sensed that she was pleased with herself. Your schedule suggests that now would be suitable for a rest. She rose. Dinner will be at 19:30. Dean Li Shanchuan is happy to meet you. I do need to unpack, I said as well. And while I'm looking forward to seeing the dean, I would very much like to hear more of your story, Niren Fu Guangshao. As is proper, Reed. I stripped out of my sweaty shirt and pants, spritzed them with drip clean to shed the grime of travel, and hung them over the bathtub. I unpacked the rest of my clothes, toiletries, and electronics, but hesitated over the book of Li Bai poems with Mandarin on one page and English on the other that I had acquired on a whim in Hechuan. My late wife, Zhuzha, had been a fan of the hard-drinking Tang poet, and when I discovered the book in a hotel store at the start of my trip, I'd bought it. Now, despite its elegant gilt slipcase and colorful illustrations, I regretted its bulk, especially on top of the stack of gifts I'd been given on previous stops. Who was the book for? I sat back against the headboard of my bed for my afternoon meditation. Thoughts of a bot who was sorry for my loss buzzed in my head. Fu Guangshao and I were the last to arrive at the restaurant. A party of 8 was waiting for us, and there was a hail of introductions, most of which bounced off me. Then Dean Li said, "Shall we?" An obviously mechanical associate opened the doors to a private dining room. The 10 of us found places at a round table. Rolling associates carried the first round of hot and cold dishes to the enormous turntable at its center. I settled between Dean Li and Fu Guangshao. 3 of the dean's human colleagues from the college sat across from us. 2 were older men, Professor Huang Xi, a mechatronics engineer, and Dr. Ming Yuhong, a social psychologist who may have been Dean Li's assistant. A younger woman, Wen something, was deputy party secretary of the CCP. She smiled throughout the dinner and said, not a word, probably listening to her translation stone. I doubted she knew much English. The rest of our group were the other student, Ne Ren. I had yet to sort their names. All four wore the same robot t-shirts as Fu Guangxiao, but presented variously as female, male, and fluid. They were short and slight. Had they been flesh and blood, none would have weighed more than 60 kilos. I was struck by how handsome and near human they were. Back home, they might have been mistaken for a sophisticated run of Western sex bots. Once again, I second-guessed HA's thinking. Given the worldwide replacement paranoia, Metabot thought it best to keep humanoid bots deep in the uncanny valley. The conversation around the table was in English in my honor, although I guessed the Ne Ren were having side conversations in bot subspeak. That the Ne Ren spoke aloud with lips and tongues and vocal cords instead of electrodynamic speakers was more evidence of their designer's obsession with human verisimilitude. As a result, although their diction was robust, their pronunciation was mixed at best, and I was often sidetracked by their accents. Professor Huang stared hungrily at the dishes on the table as Dean Li said polite words of welcome. When he finished, Fu Guangxiao nudged the turntable to signal that the meal had begun. As the food passed, we helped ourselves, even the Ne Ren, although their portions were spare. "This is your first visit to Qisheng?" asked Dean Li, a frail man with a scraggly white goatee who looked overdue for his next stem cell reset. "Qisheng, yes," I said. "I visited a friend in Hechuan last week, and after that I stayed in the Liangxiang new area. I'm amazed at how big Chongqing is. My friend claims it's the same size as our state of Maine in the U.S. "The largest city in the world," volunteered one of the Ne Ren, whose name I'd forgotten. "In terms of area." I was impressed by this clumsy but respectable attempt at small talk until Professor Huang jumped to correct her. "Validate your data, robot," it came across as an order. "Tokyo is bigger." He gave me a grimace as if to apologize for her gaffe. "I take it you've been... Talk about sprawl." His rebuke puzzled me. Sprawl, yes. It didn't seem like something a teacher would say. Why humiliate this Ne Ren in front of an outsider? "Actually, Chongqing is the largest municipality under a unified jurisdiction." Another student, Dong Guiying, came to her defense. "Tokyo is a metropolitan area and is only bigger if you count separate cities like Yokohama and Kawasaki. But a metropolitan area is not one single city, which is what Chongqing is." Professor Huang glowered and might have scolded her as well if associates had not brought a new round of dishes. While the other Ne Ren beamed at Dong Guiying with approval, the three faculty eyed their plates. Fu Guangxiao changed the subject. "Do you enjoy Sichuan cooking, Reed?" "I do," I said. "It's one of the things I've enjoyed most about visiting Chongqing." Dong Guiying leaned past Dean Li to get my attention. "You like spicy, Professor Reed Cheng, or not spicy?" "The spicier the better." This pleased her. "Try the shui shi yu." She spun the turntable until a bowl of chilies and slices of fish floating in a dangerous red broth presented itself. I served myself, careful not to splash. "What gives this bright color?" I leaned forward and took a tentative bite. "Du banxiang," Don Guiying said. "A fermented bean paste." Everyone watched my reaction, so I was relieved that it wasn't any hotter than the spicy duck neck I'd had in Hechuan. Near my limit, but not there. "Perfect spice," I said. "Good call." I knew many Chinese worried that Western palates were too delicate for fiery Sichuan cuisine, so I wanted to put her at ease. "And you?" I said. "What's your spice tolerance? Or do you have a sense of taste?" "Ne Ren experience all the senses," interrupted Fu Guangxiao, "to better understand what is human." "And why is that important?" I asked. Too late, I realized that this was a fraught question. The students looked stricken, the humans embarrassed. I'd stumbled into a controversy. "Harmonious human relations," said Fu Guangxiao carefully, "is the purpose of this project." "One of many goals." Dean Li patted the table with an open hand as if calling a meeting to order. "And we explore many paths to achieve them." He gestured around the table. "These Ne Ren have gathered to study robot design." "Redesign more like," grumbled Professor Huang, "as if the Ne Ren should be the standard for all associates." And the faculty is here to provide proper guidance. He shot the engineer a warning glare. Talk around the table ground to a halt. I wondered how often this group ate together or even sat in the same room. The silence stretched until Dong Guiying spoke up. So, you asked about spiciness, Professor Reed Cheng? She gestured at the scraps on her plate. Any pungency above 100,000 on the Scoville scale is beyond my wish to experience. Well, then we have similar tastes, I gave her a thumbs up. I'm perfectly happy with Xiaomi La chilies. With food established as a safe subject, table talk resumed. The students asked about Chinese food in the States. I complained that in most restaurants it lacked character. The best you can say is that they stir-fry with real ingredients like sprouts and water chestnuts and peppers, bok choy. You have dumplings? Asked Dean Lee. Most are frozen, I grumbled, probably wrapped in Shanghai and airshipped or printed. I've been living in Singapore the last few months, but I hear people even printing rice in the States. Americans like to eat in a hurry, said Dean Lee. Slow down and enjoy, Professor. I try, believe me. I'm a centenarian, not a teenager. I like to take my time with meals well prepared. I reached chopsticks toward a platter and claimed some twice-cooked pork. Like this. The Ne Regrette watched me eat as if I were doing a magic trick. The faculty focused on their own plates. Don't get me started on printing, I said. It has ruined desserts, donuts like sugar sponges, dry ice cream. Donuts? Asked a student. Look it up, said Dong Guiying. Like yu tiao. I remember there was always a pizza when I taught in New York City, said Dr. Ming Yuhang. But not like ours covered with wet tomato sauce. His face wrinkled in disgust. Well, pizza should be messy, I said. Thick with cheese and sauce and too many toppings that slide off. I had a durian pizza at Yusheng Pizza Hut last week that had no tomato at all. An associate reached for a fresh platter of dry fried green beans past me onto the turntable, and I wondered if it was awkward for H.A. Ne Regrette to be served by H.A. bots. But then they weren't eating very much. The Ne Regrette didn't have much to contribute to this chatter since their culinary experiences were limited. Eventually, Dr. Ming ran out of New York memories, and Professor Huang checked his wristpad, and Dean Lee yawned. The Ne Regrette took the hint, and the conversation sagged into the humans complaining about the weather. The consensus? Too hot, as usual. Dinner was winding down. Fu Guangshou and I said goodbye to the rest of the Ne Regrette at the entrance to the restaurant. She hesitated as they headed off, and I thought she might be calling a lift bot. The sky was overcast, but rain was not expected. Can we walk? I had so many questions. I need to stretch my legs after sitting all day. 10 minutes away, Reed. She gestured as if to point me in the right direction and send me on my way, only I had no idea where the Joyful Stay Hotel was. Then I realized she was waving to Dong Guiying, who had peeled away from the Ne Regrette and was trotting back to us. You called, Mentor Guangshou? Student Guiying, she said, and I assumed that she had summoned her in subspeak. Reed is walking. It would be best if you guide him. Me, Mentor? She looked uncertain and not a little distressed. It would be most proper that you escort him now and for the next 3 days. You honor me, Mentor, but you should be the one to enjoy such close contact with Professor Reed Cheng. She made a shooing gesture. Many other meeting opportunities will occur. Then she turned to me. Sorry for changing plans, Reed, she said. Will Ne Regrette Dong Guiying be a harmonious replacement? They could have decided this assignment long before today or even worked on it moments ago in subspeak. Instead, they had apparently performed this odd bit of theater for my benefit. Of course, I bowed to hide my bewilderment. An excellent idea. I enjoy her company very much. But then I thought, no, this wasn't for show. Dong Guiying seemed genuinely puzzled. Had Fu Guangshou made this decision impulsively? Good night, then, she said. Student Guiying, recall that Professor Reed Cheng can ask all questions, visit all facilities. No restrictions. No restrictions, she nodded. Fu Guangshou turned and left us without another word. I shot Dong Guiying a quizzical glance. You didn't expect that. She frowned and brightened. But excited all the same, Professor Reed Cheng. I asked Niren Fu Guangshou to call me Reed. I offered my hand. Please? Yes, Professor Reed. No, Niren Dongguiying. Just Reed, please. She considered, then shook my hand. Her palm was cold. This is a night of honors for me. Please honor me too, Reed. My English name is Laurel. Lovely name. Guiying means laurel. I think it's much easier to pronounce than Dongguiying. I pretended to be offended. You say I'm mangling your name in Mandarin? She didn't miss a beat. I say that you're only trying very hard to do right, Reed. Tell me something. I know that Qiren means robot, like it says on your t-shirt, but what does Niren mean? Ni is to imitate or to compare or to prepare. Ren is human. In Chinese literature, Niren means giving human characteristics to the non-human. But origins are not implied by these characters as to whether we are created or self-created. Why not just call yourselves associates? Well, because we are proud that we are not those bots. She actually seemed to preen. We are a new and superior species of mechanical intelligence. I wondered if arrogance had been baked into the Niren mindset, but then I caught myself finding fault with their designers again, so I instead asked Laurel about herself. Of all the Niren students in the project, she had the only original overlay self. Like most of them, her power-up had been some 30 years ago, but she had never been repurposed, having achieved consciousness with a level 7 cognitive implant. She could continue as her first self for decades before she'd need to have her memory scraped, quantized, and loaded into a new body. She'd spent most of her existence in Qisheng, although in 2111 she had taken a year off from her deliberative practice at the college to study in the West. She had worked on her French in Marseille and her English in San Francisco, which was why I could understand her so well. She said she liked to sing to practice her pronunciation, and that French cabaret songs were her favorite. I asked to hear something, but she was too embarrassed to sing in the street. Her goal was to work in space someday on one of the Chinese habitats. She volunteered shyly that her current affinity mate was Tang Munchen, who I recalled as the fluid-gendered student. Affinity mate? This was new to me. Part of human modeling, identify certain Niren as special friends. Special friend. I was mystified. That you like? What? A lot? She skipped 2 paces ahead and faced me, walking backward. People in the West don't think liking a lot is something a bot can do? Her expression was defiant. Like a lot is an emotion. Only humans can have emotion. Many believe this, yes. HA has made pain and pleasure algorithms for the associates. We call these basic reactions itch and tickle. Niren have made new nested subroutines for this pain and pleasure to help our own itch and tickle evolve into emergent behaviors. Affinity and antipathy. Love and hate? I was trying to reserve judgment, but it was hard. Could these emergent behaviors be hallucinations? Extraordinary claim for mere bots to make. She gave me a wry smile and tapped the tip of her nose. See the extraordinary evidence. Then she fell back into step beside me, her boldness fading to deference. Fu Guangshou suggests we settle for like and dislike. We walked in silence for half a block. The sophistication of the Niren made me realize that I needed to learn more about advanced Chinese robotics. You are quiet, Reed, said Laurel. Is it because I am too large for my clothes? Or how do you say in English? Close enough, I laughed. No, this is very helpful. I could feel my shirt sticking to my back in the heat. But you said that the Niren created these new algorithms. You self-reconfigure? HA allows that? We ask for many hardware mods, but maintenance and optimization must perform all embodying projects. The engineers always complain about our budgets. So no, we don't control our mechatronics, but our processing time is our own. Niren have been recursively self-improving since Fu Guangshou came to Qisheng. That would interest the human-level intelligence regulators in Amsterdam, so I asked. Who has oversight? Dean Lee? Dean Lee mostly keeps his door shut and eyes closed, she said. Early on, we studied with the faculty. Now all they want to do is study us. They worry about how we process, so they try new model interpretations and output auditing. Attention, weight, visualization. Also, Dr. Ming asked too many questions about group decision-making and conversation protocols. We could see the lights of the Joyful Stay Hotel now. We had reached a strip of hot pot, noodle, and fast food restaurants, many still open at 2200 and busy with customers. The street was rainbowed with LED lights on their signs, mostly in Mandarin, although I spotted a home original chicken and a happy table. When we reached the hotel, I started up the stairs to the entrance, but Laurel held me back. We live on the other side of campus, she said. So tomorrow, Fu Guangshao will come to give you your tour. We should meet in the lobby at 9. There's no food at the hotel, but all the shops this way are owned by the college and will accept your pass for breakfast. Do you drink coffee? Religiously. I'm American. That earned me a grin. Easy to tell. So the nearest coffee shop won't open until 9, but there is another close to me. Can I come early to bring you something hot? Maybe help ordering breakfast? You're a lifesaver. If they can do a latte, I take a large with extra sugar. Thanks. Say 8:15? Perfect. I'm glad we had this chance to talk, Laurel, I bowed. You Ne Ren are amazing. HA must be very happy with you. A shadow passed over her face. I'd said something wrong. She came up next to me and then went up on tiptoes because she was much shorter than I was. Why are you here, Reed? I was taken aback as much by her fierce expression as the question. Fu Guangshao invited you, she said. But why did you come? My invitation had come from Dean Li, not Fu Guangshao, so I was confused. I dodged the question with a joke. So I could discover spicy fish and that fermented bean paste? I tried to grin. What did you call it? Dubangxiang. But that's not why. For some reason, she wanted to challenge me. Maybe you came because you're worried about us? Then she backed down and waved. Good night, Reed. 8:15. The back of the hotel elevator was half mirror. The man in it looked older than 103. I used my pass to get into my room and kicked my shoes into the closet. I was exhausted, but not sleepy, so I dropped onto the couch facing the window. A blurry scatter of lights on the lower slopes of Guqian Mountain gave way to a shadow reaching into the clouded black sky. The darkness had a weight that I decided I couldn't bear, so I opaqued the window. I regretted not asking Laurel where I could get a drink. I would have ordered it at the restaurant if any of the faculty had, although then we would have been doing shots of Bai Shu, which always gave me a headache. But I bet the Ne Ren would have pretended to drink, maybe even fake being tipsy. They were better at human simulation than our bots, no question, but then we weren't really trying. Imagining how complicated their mechanics must be made me even more tired. I was on a sabbatical, not a spy mission, although maybe that's what Metabot was hoping for once I recovered myself. If I brought my impressions of the Ne Ren home, some corporate planner would probably order up a copycat project to hedge our cognizer bet. I didn't want any part of that. HA's verisimilitude move was a misreading of embodiment theory. Yes, planting these AIs and knockoff human bodies would change them, but into what? Not humans. Bots didn't need to become like us, they needed to become like bots, whatever that was supposed to be. I got up, poured myself some swan meiting, and printed some snacks. The shrimp-flavored Rice Crisps were vile, but I was able to choke down a couple of almond cookies. I'd been tired a lot lately. Or, no, that wasn't right. I had the energy to get on with life, but no clue as to what life should be. Things hadn't been right since the rejuvenation. I'd had a difficult course of stem cell and telomerase therapies, and as I was discharged, the docs gave me the dread talk. I had put off getting reset while Shusha was failing, and I had waited too long. Future interventions would have diminishing returns, which meant that I had maybe another 50 years left. Time to decide what I should do with the last third of my life without a wife. Shusha always said that the transition period after rejuvenation was like being caught in a revolving door. You either went forward to somewhere new or backward to where you just were. Me, I was stuck going around and around. Shusha had 2 successful resets and 1 failure. Sometimes I got mad at her for leaving me, especially when I really needed to ask her advice. She'd been 60 years older than I was, and saw the world for what it was. Laurel wanted to know why I had come to Qisheng. Maybe it was because of the post-reset funk, but I'd been lost ever since Zhuzha had died. At least when she was sick, I knew where I was supposed to be. Since I had taken rejuvenation leave from Metabot, this Chinese no-place was as good as any other. What Laurel had said on the hotel steps was half right. I was worried about the Ne Regrette, but more worried about myself. Robotics Technology College dated from China's reckless construction boom of the previous century. Affiliated with Chongqing Mobile University at one point, it had served 10,000 students, but during the worldwide population crash of the 2070s, many buildings had been mothballed. During the left-turn rebellions, maintenance became erratic, and much of the hastily built infrastructure failed. Helpful associates purchased it, tore down what was derelict, and rehabbed the rest. Although HA still called it college, it was now a corporate development and training center for new robotic projects, like autonomous space drones, mobile manufacturing modules, and the Ne Regrette. The college was set in a bowl at the foot of the Gujian mountain. Dorms, offices, and labs climbed slopes opposite the mountain. The old school sports complex was at the bottom of the bowl, a gym across from a soccer pitch, ringed by track, basketball, and badminton courts. There were lecture halls, digital theaters, a library, a huge social center, and 2 cafeterias. A commercial strip, half of which was owned by HA, lined the southern edge of the property. We passed dozens of humans and associates that next day as we crossed the landscaped grounds and climbed into the Ne Regrette quarters. Fu Guangshao claimed as many as 1,000 human trainees lived at the college and enrolled in continuing education courses at any one time. Many of the faculty, engineers, and human support staff lived in the center city, several kilometers away. Associate staff docked in recharge stalls at the power station. Almost all the associates were standard hardbots built with durable materials like metal and plastic, unlike the soft humanoid Ne Regrette. The Ne Regrette lived on the 7th floor of a dorm at the top of a steep hill. Fu Guangshao claimed they were happy to be removed from the rest of the students, but I found the hike to their perch a sweaty punishment. I'd printed a lightweight t-shirt but wore slacks to keep from looking like an American tourist. At the top of the hill, Laurel announced that we had climbed 404 steps, which she said was an unlucky number. I could believe it. My clothes hung on me like I strolled through a sprinkler. I paused to catch my breath and take in the view. The college lay at my feet like a toy village. The tiny human pedestrians carried umbrellas against the sun as they hurried between buildings. The bots didn't need shade. The soccer field was deserted, but a handful of insane people were playing on the badminton courts. I looked across campus to the river and the mist-shrouded Gujian and its temple. Even though we were just kilometers from the central city, the campus was surrounded by hilly fields and forests. "Are you all right, Reed?" said Laurel. The 2 Ne Regrette seemed concerned, as if they might have to carry me back to my hotel. "Sure." I pretended to swagger. "Tomorrow, let's do the mountain." The lobby had walls of concrete block tinted baby green, with 3-meter-tall money trees and split-leaf philodendrons softening its prison pallor. A pair of associates sat at the front desk. Behind them was an array of flags on gold-painted poles. Both guards acknowledged Fu Guangshao, but she did not return the greeting as we walked to the elevators. "What's with all the flags?" I recognized the crescent moon of Singapore, Ashoka Chakra of India, and the golden star of Vietnam, but no stars and stripes. "They honor the nations of the Helpful Associates family," said Fu Guangshao, "to make the international trainees proud." The Ne Regrette quarters had less privacy than a Metabot cubicle farm. The entire 7th floor was their one enormous room, bright with artificial lighting. All the windows had shades drawn. Various stations lined the walls, and a conference table that could seat 20 dominated the space. Tang Muchin waved to us from a pop-up terminal at the near end of the table. In the kitchen at the far end of the room, Kai Lian was stir-frying something in a wok. Fu Guangshao and Laurel trailed me as I walked around. They were eager for my opinion, but I kept myself to myself. I browsed the utility station, which featured a printer, recycler, and a charging stall. Next, a personal care station, a vanity flanked by full-size mirrors, a shower, 2 sinks, a clothes printer, and a small open closet half filled with hanging clothes. Different, yes? Fu Guangzhou was trying to prompt me to talk. There were many dorm rooms here in the old days. Students were stacked in their bunks. She moved a flat hand up 1, 2, 3 levels to demonstrate. Not necessary for Ne Regrette. No better walls, or privacy. She nodded, proud of everything she didn't need. And the 5 of you live here? Here, she was puzzled. Ne Regrette live here in labs and classrooms. Inside, outside, wherever they are. Living is continuous. Tang Muchen joined us. Perhaps Professor Reed Cheng asked if this is our base. I think of it as home, said Laurel. Ne Regrette Tang Muchen, I said. Please call me Reed. I shook their hand. And can I ask all Ne Regrette to call me that going forward? I shot Fu Guangzhou a pointed look. Let's not be so formal. But this is how Chinese people acknowledge status. Tang Wuchen's grip surprised me since they were the smallest of the Ne Regrette. Ri Cheng is the honored professor. They gave my hand a final squeeze. Dean Li, the honored dean, and Fu Guangzhou, the honored mentor. Being Ne Regrette is also an honor because it means we are not associates, not simple bots. They smiled. My Western friend calls me Poe. Spell it P-O-E. Friend. That word again. Will do, Poe. I gave them a thumbs up. Do I recall that you're a writer? I make sentences, they shrugged. Some small fictions. Laurel said, Ghost stories. A snack is prepared. Fu Guangzhou gestured for us to move on. Student Zhiqi is ready. Just 1 charging stall for all the 5 of you, I asked as we made our way to the kitchen. Ne Regrette batteries hold 120 hours of charge, said Fu Guangzhou. High capacity gives independence. Impressive. And these are... On the vanity was an array of jars set among combs, brushes, wash pads, and dryers. Cosmetics. Hair product, skin polishes, said Poe, for superficial grooming, but all repairs are done at the MO base. When I looked puzzled, Laurel said, MO is maintenance and optimization. You see it tomorrow. The end of the conference table near the kitchen was set with plates, cups, and chopsticks for 4. I noticed a disturbing rotten smell as we approached. It was coming from a flat-bottomed wok on the induction stovetop. So, what are we making here? Deep-fried stinky tofu. Kai Lian scooped crispy brown squares 1 by 1 from the wok onto a platter of pickled cabbage. What gives it that, aroma? Fermented in special brine infused with volatiles. She untied her chef's apron, pulled it over her head, and folded it next to the burner. Big smell is indole, but also dimethyl trisulfide, phenol, dimethyl disulfide. Very safe to eat, Fu Guangzhou interrupted the litany. Authentic street food, also for hot pot. It tastes better than it smells, Laurel offered an encouraging grin. I hope so, I said. Dip it in chili sauce. Kai Lian passed the bowl. Conversation subsided while they watched me sample this delicacy. The tofu was crunchy on the outside with the inside sour and savory. The sauce had a welcome kick. Interesting, I said. I like it. This was a lie, but I sold it by taking another bite. The others took this as a cue to nibble their own tiny helpings. So we have Kai Lian, who cooks, I began. Please, Reed, she said, delighted at our new familiarity. Vicky is my English name. I raised a hand to acknowledge her. So Vicky cooks and Laurel sings and Poe writes small fictions. Do all the Ne Regrette have hidden talents? Zheng Weifeng keeps potted plants in a garden, says Vicky. I help because he is my special friend. Affinity mate, said Laurel. And Ne Regrette Fu Guangzhou? Laurel spoke up. Mentor Guangzhou paints. Wonderful. I'd love to see your work. What is your medium? Fu Guangzhou shrank. Oil and watercolor, she mumbled, but uninspired. She twisted in her chair as if to bolt for the exit. Clumsy. It would hurt your eyes. The other Ne Ren protested. Mentor Guangzhou painted Zhang Weifeng's roses on the pantry, said Po, pointing at the tall door next to the stove. Oh, sorry. She looked alarmed. Flowers are not my best subject. Nevertheless, we all stood to admire the pantry, the gracefully arching spray of white roses that climbed from one wooden door of the pantry to the other did not hurt my eyes, but Fu Guangzhou was no Van Gogh. Pretty, I said, and asked if I could peek inside. The pantry was almost bare except for staples like rice and oil, some spices, which made sense because I guessed that Vicky cooked rarely and for educational purposes only. What did surprise me were 2 empty dishes on the floor next to the pantry. You keep pets? I was charmed. A cat, Laurel said. Oh, we did. Do, said Vicky. Mimi may still come back, said Po. Cats wonder. What happened? They didn't know. Mimi was an indoor cat that hadn't left the 7th floor since she had been a kitten. 5 days ago, she had disappeared while all the Ne Ren were out. Zhang Weifeng thinks human Chinese downstairs let Mimi escape, said Vicky, or took her as a trick. Prank, Laurel corrected her. Validate your data, students. Fu Guangzhou's voice was sharp. We have no evidence to accuse the trainees. Ne Ren must try for harmony with all. Zhang Weifeng could have made a mistake carrying plants in and out, leaving the door open. Plants? I glanced around the room. I don't see any. We took them all to the college greenhouse, said Po. Not enough light here. What, with all the windows? We keep the shades closed. Po walked over to the nearest, waved it open, and peered through the window to avoid being watched. I moved to their side, stepped down. The slope was the twin of the tower we were in. The 2 facades faced each other, great slabs of green-tinted concrete broken by rows of windows. The 2 towers were close, 15 meters apart. Through the windows opposite, I spotted beds and lamps and screens and clothes hanging on lines, even trainees sitting at desks. What am I supposed to see? I couldn't tell. Well, if we leave the shades open, Po said, Ne Ren become the view. The trainees like to spy. Laurel came up behind me. They stalk us, muttered Po. This is paranoia. Fu Guangzhou brushed past us and closed the shades. The Ne Ren do not hallucinate such lies. Laurel brought coffee every morning, and then we went out to eat. I'd long since learned to like dumplings for breakfast, either pork jiaoxi or wontons in a thin broth. But the morning we visited the MO base, I ordered a sausage and quail egg baoshi bun. I enjoyed my breakfast with Laurel because she was always cheerful and sometimes refreshingly blunt. If she had been human, I might have called her flirty. The more time I spent with her and the other Ne Ren, the harder it was to keep my perspective. I was a cognitive scientist. The dangers of anthropomorphizing AI had been drilled into me since college. But in unguarded moments, I could forget that Laurel was a cleverly made machine designed to pass as a woman. I knew I should be wary of over-interpreting her gestures, assigning emotions to algorithms based on tickle and itch. My working theory of mind about her mental states might well have been nothing to do with what was in her brain. I contemplated my breakfast bun. Why don't you use chicken eggs in baoshi? Ne Ren have no say in baoshi design, Reed, she said, but the Chinese people believe quail flavor is richer. Also, chicken eggs are too big. I nodded and took a bite. You think about food a lot, she said. Oh, because your food is so delicious, I corrected myself. Or rather, Chinese people's food is. But it's not something you care about. How is it said? Food is an acquired taste. She smiled, giving me a feeling of warmth and a shiver of cognitive dissonance. But aren't you Chinese, Laurel? She considered. I am Ne Ren, built and actuated in China by a multinational corporation. I have too much identity. We arrived at the intake to the Maintenance and Optimization Center and were waved past the security desk into a long hall, bustling with associates. Big and small, bipeds, quadrupeds, and wheeled carts. I couldn't tell which bots were receiving service and which were providing it. But for the squeak of wheels and clump of footpads, it was oddly quiet, since the bots communicated on subspeak. I saw just a dozen humans as we passed through the throng, along a series of bays that opened off the spine of the building. Laurel expected me to know more about bot hardware than I did, so I confessed that I left mechatronics to the engineers. She pointed out several corrective maintenance bays, many of which were themselves room-sized bots. She said this was where run-to-failure problems were fixed. Farther along were preventative maintenance bays for routine inspections and scheduled service. As we turned into room Star 2 in the optimization section, Laurel casually revealed that she was part of an ongoing study. Optimization of elastomer design for longevity in autonomous humanoid associates, she muttered. Engineers pick the worst titles. Fu Guangzhou and Professor Huang stood at the far end of the room, watching an intelligent pickup cart with an articulated arm unload a series of black tubes from its flatbed. It placed them in a rack beside a metal workbench, 3 meters by 2. Professor Huang had been arguing with Fu Guangzhou from their body language. She was close to him, well within his personal space, as she made some point. He listened with arms tight against his sides and shoulders raised as if trying to make himself bigger. The cart placed a final tube and then backed away, spun 180 degrees, and rolled for the door. Excuse me, it said as it passed us. New elastomers from NUS Research, said Laurel in a low voice. Maybe my replacement muscles. Wait, I said. Are you here to get serviced? Could happen. Part of the study. Laurel strode ahead of me into the room. We are here, Professor Huang. Mentor Guangzhou. She boosted herself into a sitting position on the table, legs dangling. Hello again, Professor Cheng. Professor Huang offered his hand. Have our bots been treating you well? I knew that both Laurel and Fu Guangzhou would take offense at being called bots, but since they ignored the slight, I did too. I continue to be impressed with their accomplishments, I gave him an unenthusiastic shake. And yours. A quadruped with reversed knees approached the table and did a kind of curtsy. I, too, am here. It spoke aloud for the benefit of Professor Huang and me. Scheduled testing can begin? Professor Huang waved a permission. It stood up on 2 legs and pulled a cuff from a retractable bin on what had been its underside. Laurel settled herself onto the table and pressed the thumb and forefinger of her left hand to her right wrist, which caused the hand to detach. When she set it on the table, it crawled to a hand-shaped receptacle and settled there. As the quad fitted a diagnostic device to Laurel's wrist, she watched my reaction. I glanced away. I wasn't surprised that she had systems monitoring port, but was interested that both she and Fu Guangzhou had wanted me to witness her getting serviced. When the device finished its power-on self-test beeps, I stole a look. Does it hurt? Her lips tightened with an unconvincing smile. More itch than tingle. Her gaze softened then and seemed to drift inward. I might have guessed she was meditating or daydreaming, but of course these were not Ne Regrette behaviors. The quad swung Laurel's legs onto the table, braced its grippers on both of her shoulders, and eased her onto her back. I was bothered by her lonely, detached hand and scanned the room to find something else to think about. I fixed on the rack of new tubes. So, what do we have here? This earned me a lecture on elastomers from Professor Huang, most of which I didn't need. I knew that development of these flexible, stretchable polymers had made it possible for bots to do close work. Hard bots built with durable materials like metal and plastic were still best for most applications, but there were advantages to building softer and more adaptable machines like the Ne Regrette. Elastomers could become artificial muscles and self-healing skin. Some electroactive elastomers possessed intrinsic sensor properties and could function as a nervous system. The trade-off was that elastomers had a limited service life before they degraded, as short as 3 to 5 years depending on activity and use conditions. While research continued, the bottom line was that soft bots like the Ne Regrette were constructed of materials that were both fragile and short-lived. Take this bot, for example. Professor Huang consulted his wristpad. Annual maintenance costs. I had enough of his slights. Her name is Niren Dong Guingying. He shot me a hard stare. Fu Guangshou turned her head away, but she was too late. I caught her smirk. Annual maintenance costs, he repeated, over 3 times that of the average associates we see in this facility. Is Niren Dong Guingying 3 times as productive? He looked at me as if I knew the answer. I wasn't sure who he disliked more, me or the Niren. How many associates self-program? Fu Guangshou thrust herself into the space again. Yes, said Professor Huang. And are these changes that you make to yourselves improvements? The Niren experiment. Project, said Fu Guangshou. I thought if she got any nearer, he might shove her away. Our project was authorized by the Planning Committee and fully approved by the Executive Committee in Shenzhen. For 7 years, his voice was severe. 6 years ago. Reports will be made. She bristled, but then subsided. Outcomes assessed. He gave her his back. And besides the cost of servicing these units, Professor Reed, there is the added expense of downtime. Again, he checked his pad. This Dong Guiying has over 100 hours of planned and unplanned downtime this year, and it's only May. Our downtime is all mechanical, Fu Guangshou said. Computationally, there is no downtime. Niren constantly process our experiences. Laura was still lying down when she started to sing. Both Professor Huang and I jumped. Ne Regrette Rien, Ne Regrette Rien. Her singing was breathy, but she carried the familiar melody well. It's hallucinating, Professor Huang was horrified. Is that Spanish? Ne le bien, comment fait? French, said Fu Guangshou, who betrayed no surprise. Historical singing. The voice was too small, but I liked the accent. She owned every syllable and crushed her R's like the second coming of Edith Piaf. Tu sens mes bien égaux. Does this happen often? Professor Huang said. He backed away from the table as if worried if Laurel might explode. Sometimes she practices French, so yes. Fu Guangshou rested her hand on Laurel's leg. Student Guiying is processing. She has no downtime, as you see. Mes chagrins, mes plaisirs. But singing, what is it about? Regrets, I said, charmed. She regrets nothing. Rien. It's an old cabaret song. It sounds like she's hissing. He shook his head to get the song out of it. As Laurel came to the last verse, she lifted her neck and fixed me with a look so intense that I forgot to breathe. Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. Car ma vie, car mes joies. Aujourd'hui, ça commence avec toi. Then she looked back to the ceiling. Is it over? Professor Huang sounded hopeful. I shook myself. She had put me into a trance. It was wrong in so many ways for her to point those final lyrics at me. Because my life, because my joys today, that begins with you. I should have been upset, but I wasn't. It was just flirting, I told myself, a Ne Ren pretending to be human. Professor Huang checked his wristpad. She should be at least another hour in diagnostics. He sidestepped anxiously toward the door. Why don't we see the rest of M.O.? We trudged back through the various M.O. bays where associates were busy working on other associates. As we got farther away from Laurel, Professor Huang relaxed. He was enthusiastic about maintenance, and I could tell he was good at it. Too bad that my understanding of advanced robotic systems was so sketchy. Although cognitive scientists and mechatronics engineers shared a common language, we were members of 2 different tribes. Fu Guangshou subsided as he showed us around and eventually excused herself to check on Laurel. Soon after she left, Professor Huang was enthusiastically demonstrating an arm bench that had been upgraded with his very own device to recalibrate force-torque sensors. It streamlines repairs for our standard end effectors. He patted a flat gray slab with pride. HA already has the Chinese patent, and we are applying internationally. My 2 takeaways for the morning were that maintenance and optimization not only cost too much for the knee run, but would be never-ending. I stifled a laugh when Professor Huang compared his work replacing their components to the ship of Theseus, although I gave him points for the reference to the Greek paradox of identity. I was dreading a lunch invitation from him, but at 12:30, Fu Guangzhou rescued me with news that Laurel was getting an elastomer bundle replacement. She would take Laurel's place as my guide for the afternoon. We would sit in on a 1:30 meeting with Dean Lee, and there was time for a quick lunch. Happy Table was a fast food shop on the commercial strip at the edge of campus. It offered counter service for noodles and basic stir-fries. Carrier bots and e-bikes were parked on the sidewalk in front. Fu Guangzhou went in with me to translate. We ordered a jiangbo tofu for me with a side of boiled napa and a Coke Zero. I must step out. You eat now. She touched my arm to get my attention. I will wait outside for you. There were a dozen plastic 4-top tables with plenty of open seats. Why? You don't have to pretend to eat. Sit and keep me company. It would not be harmonious. She indicated a couple of diners scrutinizing us with suspicion. I saw one twist her wristpad to take our picture. Sorry. She was out of the door before I could object. I understood that the Niren situation on campus was fraught, but I realized how difficult it really was. They'd been designed by HA to relate to humans, but were all too often treated as pariahs. When my order was ready, I joined Fu Guangzhou on the sidewalk. No. Horror struck. She held both hands up to turn me around. No tables and no AC outside. It's too hot. You were right. Not very harmonious. I jerked a dismissive thumb at the restaurant. It spoils the appetite. We can find a bench in the shade. I knew there would be seats near the badminton courts, so we climbed the stairs to campus. We settled on the top tier of the bleachers under the shade of a row of white fig trees. I popped the top of my takeaway bowl, unwrapped my chopsticks, and pinched up a chunk of tofu. I ate in silence, hoping Fu Guangzhou might talk about what had happened that morning, but she focused on the courts. There were 8, and despite the fierce midday sun, 2 were occupied. One mixed doubles match was intense, with short, vicious rallies and gruff banter between points that sounded to me like a trash talk. Serve, volley, return, out of bounds. Serve, lob, return, smash. I used to play in the backyard with my kids, I said finally. But this is a whole other game. These people should be in the Olympics. After ping pong, it's the most popular Chinese sport. The courts are always busy here. She leaned back against the bleacher. You mentioned your kids, Walton and Aurelia. Do they still play? Her question was such a surprise that I almost choked on a pea pod. Wait, I did the math. Walt is 78 and lives in Zagreb, I think. I have no idea what he plays. Haven't heard from him in years. And Aurelia moved to Gateway back in 2079, so no badminton space. Grandchildren? I hadn't thought of this possibility. Walt, maybe. Aurelia, definitely not. I brought the bowl to my mouth and scooped the last of the rice. I feel bad about losing track of them. I suppose I let them down after the divorce, but we were all adults and they never got along with Shusha. Do you miss her? 2 days ago, I might have bristled at such personal questions, so why was I encouraging them now? I do, I sighed. I loved her, even though she was smarter than me, which she was always the first to point out. I glanced at Fu Guangzhou to see if she could tell that I was joking. She offered a puzzled smile. She was much older than me, got through 2 successful resets. But I also miss being married, having someone to tell things to. What would you tell her about us? I put my bowl aside. I'm afraid she wouldn't approve of you. It was the truth, but I didn't want to offend this Niren, so I babbled an explanation. She was born before the left turn, and robots put her parents out of work. When she was a kid, her entire family was worried about replacement. Robots you helped build. Definitely a problem, I gave a grim chuckle. We got over it, mostly. We watched an extended rally. 3 lightning volleys, then a smash saved by a high clear to the baseline, a weak return, then a net kill for the point. Laurel told me about your affinity partners, I said. She has Po and Vicky has Zheng Wefeng. But Ni Ren Fu Guangshou. She was dismissive. Not proper for a mentor to single just one. Why do you have to be the mentor? My turn to take her by surprise. Because the other Ni Ren asked. I waited, determined for her to say more. I have had many selves over many years. On the Chang'an assembly line, I was serial LC234947320. Then I was Fu Guangshou after the upgrade. Professor Mei gave me the nickname of Ada. Good call. Then I was promoted to be Ni Ren. Then I became the mentor. She patted her chest. How was it said? Lonely on the top. On the courts, the competitive match we'd been watching broke up. The players were sweating and came to the bleachers where we sat to grab their towels. When I saw them gawking at us, I gave a couple of appreciative claps. They all laughed. One bowed. Fu Guangshou was embarrassed for me. They were not playing for you, Reed. I know, but I enjoyed their competition. We watched them walk off together. Don't the Ni Ren compete? I asked. Well, not with each other. I let that hang in the air for a moment. Well, I said, there's only the 5 of you. Actually, why is that? Well, because unlike you, Ni Ren do not have children. I must have looked shocked because she drew back in alarm. A joke, she said. Sorry. My humor needs work. No, I get it, I said. Nice try. I nodded in encouragement, only I didn't think it was funny. We are always asking for more Ni Ren, but we get no help from the college. She looked disgusted. They complain about our budget. So Professor Huang was telling me. He doesn't seem to like you. He is the most resentful human. Her mouth went tight as if to seal off further comment. Is it true what he said about the Ni Ren project just 1 year ago? Time is short, she said. HA goals may not be met, although they have not shared those goals with the Ni Ren. She gave me a look that I couldn't quite read, part resignation, but also a plea for help, only I had nothing to offer. Maybe they will junk this body, scrape my memories again, quantize and upload. Ni Ren Fu Guangshou can wait in the cloud for another body in the next self. You think that's what they'll do? Write the whole project off and banish you to the cloud? You're optimized for this body, and it's a marvel. It's not the whole point of the project. The point was learning how to make Ni Ren. She picked up my empty bowl and gave me a sly smile. So that is one success. She stood. 13:30 meeting soon. Dean Lee leaned on his standalone cane at the door to the conference room next to his office. Even though our dinner had been just 2 days before, he looked older than I remembered. I sent the other Ni Ren in already. Probably the prospect of this meeting had aged him. The conference room was like 1,000 similar rooms where time was scheduled to be collaboratively wasted on project status meetings. 8 swivel chairs around a fake wood table, enormous view screens at either end, and a wall of windows with a view to the soccer pitch. Dean Lee hobbled to his place at the head of the table and left the cane standing next to his chair, gyros purring. Po, Vicky, and Zheng Wefeng, now known to me as Chester, sat with their backs to the windows. Apparently Laurel wasn't going to be with us. I followed Fu Guangzhou to our seats, which faced the Ni Ren and windows. On our way, I noticed 3 paintings on the wall behind us, oil on canvas framed in black metal, about 30 centimeters square. They were studies of rooms that were empty of people, furniture, or decoration of any kind. In each, a lone open door let a rumor of the outside world into the flat interior space of the floor, ceiling, wall, and shadow. The palettes were sparse. In one, a formless emerald world, maybe a forest, cast a yellow glow on the room. In another, it was the sea outside that tinted the room the green of spring. The last showed a gray dusk washing on the room with all the colors of darkness. Whose are these? I said, but I knew as soon as I'd spoke. More bad imitation art. Fu Guangshou was embarrassed. Trapezoids and rectangles and broken viewpoint. Sorry. Don't look, please. She slid onto her chair and glared out of the windows. No, I think they are a real accomplishment, said Dean Li. I've shared them with the committee in Shenzhen. I studied them longer than I should have because Fu Guangzhou pulled my chair out impatiently to urge me to sit. Their simplicity suggested an aching loneliness, but somehow they made me feel like someone was about to arrive. I like these a lot, I murmured to her as I slid into my seat. The yellow, especially. Then I spoke up. They are striking, Dean Li. Of course, the artist is never the best judge of the work. Ne Ren Fu Guangzhou. You've made a new fan. The Ne Ren looked as if they might burst into applause at this compliment, but Fu Guangzhou's expression was stony. The rest of the meeting lived down to my low expectations. Dean Li had asked the Ne Ren to report on their ongoing efforts to help provide transparency to their self-programming. While they were able to document the upper layer changes they were making, their model still had billions of parameters in hidden layers that made full interpretation impractical. Complex progressions led to emergent behaviors that might be observed but were difficult to document. They had tried various interpretability methods to inspect, manipulate, and decode the hidden processing of their models. At first, they had collaborated with Dean Li and his cognitive engineers to develop auditing protocols, but despite some success with probe testing, with controlled inputs and attention-weight visualization, the efforts had failed. The Ne Ren had also tried to parse each other's models, but their individual divergences were too pronounced for reliability. No surprise, since Metabot 2 still struggled to solve the infamous black box problem. The paranoid anti-bot fringe liked to claim that the bots were keeping secrets from us, especially about how smart they were. Despite all the tool building and some breakthroughs, the deepest internal decision-making processes of the Ne Ren models were neither directly observable nor easily interpreted. Not by humans, not even by themselves. The meeting went on too long. I wasn't sure whether the Ne Ren were showing off for Dean Li or for me. Finally, it was over. Dean Li grabbed his cane and struggled to stand. I popped up to help, worried that he might pull it over, but the gyros whined as he hoisted himself upright. I'm fine, he said. Fine. Never in doubt, I replied. I wonder if we might speak in private. A ripple of anxiety went through the Ne Ren. He considered. Is it tomorrow you leave? Well, my flight is at 11:45. And you need to talk. My office, then. Maybe an early dinner after. I have been a poor host. Not at all. Do you want me to wait? Fu Guangzhou appeared disconcerted as she hovered by my side. She probably had other plans for me, but I needed to understand what was happening with the Ne Ren, and I wasn't sure she knew. No, I said. I can find my way back. The dean's office was smaller than I expected, unlike some academic throne rooms in Singapore and Cambridge. The floors were polished concrete, the walls printed wood. The desktop was a blank black screen. Across from it, 2 wide chairs faced each other in a cramped conversation area. Shelves between them displayed books and 3D family photos. A gaudy Catalia orchid with a spike of red and yellow flowers, a couple of antique enameled porcelain bowls on wooden stands, and a grotesque bronze head about the size of a grapefruit that caught my interest. A reproduction of a San Xingtui mask, said Dean Li. I watched apprehensively as he positioned himself in front of the chair opposite me, leaned back into it, let go of the cane, and fell backward with a grunt. He took a deep, satisfied breath. Pick it up if you want. The mask's mouth and the eyes stood out. Wire, thin lips drawn tight and a grimace stretched from ear to ear. Triangular eyes bulged. The thing stared up at me as if it could read my thoughts. We know nothing about the culture that made the original. They left no writing, just a trove of artifacts, mostly bronze. Disappeared 3,000 years ago. Centuries before the Terracotta Army. They look like science fiction aliens. That's often said, he smiled. I like to imagine them as associates, watchful with those big eyes. Stoic. Mysterious. I set the mask back on the shelf. The Ne Ren aren't particularly stoic. Yes, but they aren't associates. Or so they insist. He tapped his wristpad. Would you like something, coffee, after that eternal meeting? That would be great. A minute. He started tapping again. Dean Lee, why did you invite me to visit here? He looked up, annoyed. And why are you Americans in such a hurry? He cleared his throat. Because Fu Guangzhou asked me to. Do you do everything she asks? He snorted. She would say the opposite, that I say no and no and no again. As in no to building more Ne Ren. His sigh was rueful. You know the law of holes, Professor Reed. Tell me, if you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. The sunk cost fallacy. Does that mean you pull the plug on them? On them, his voice turned bitter. You see me as I am, Reed. I have 137 years. HA is ordering me to retire soon or they'll fire me. He leaned back despondently. I was surprised when they picked Robotics Technology College for their Ne Ren project. I never welcomed it. Funding and prestige, yes, but the chances. How is it said? The stakes, they were high. Chinese have a saying, arrive with excitement, leave in disappointment. HA's disappointment had a cost. Someone must pay. Professor Huang calls it an experiment. Well, if that's so, then failure is allowed. He may be dean next, or Shenzhen may clean the house. So the project might fail because of the numbers? Well, that depends. He ran his palm back and forth on the arm of the couch, as if scratching an itch. Who is adding in which numbers? In my opinion, which does not count, what is happening here is important. I might even call it marvelous. An associate brought the coffee on a low lacquered table, which he set between us. We'll have a lift bought in 20 minutes, the dean said to it. Make a reservation for the room at Lao Shao, please. Understood, it said. As it left, I wondered who the please was for, me or the bot. The coffee setup was 2 cups of hot water and a triangular dish with instant crystals, printed creamer and sugar. Rather than watch Dean Lee struggle out of the chair, I rose and made him a cup. Professor Huang says the maintenance budget is a problem, I said. And I believe him, but then I don't get the whole verisimilitude design scheme. Embodiment theory is anthropology, not robotics. Making them more human-like doesn't make them human. I handed him his coffee. Why are they so pretty? Maybe so people will fall in love with them. I growled in disbelief. I forget they're machines? What was he insinuating? Not likely. Call it intimacy, then. Emergent behavior resulting from high-quality social acceptance, according to my colleague, Dr. Ming Yuang. There was a gleam in his eye that I didn't like, but doubt it, if you want. Here's another reason. Do you know the story of the moon race? Sure, and China won it. The first permanent base, 3 more and counting. No, the U.S. won the first one back in 1969. Why did your government spend all those dollars to go to a desert in space? Not for science. Political power, no, certainly not for profit. Then where was the value? Pride, I think, acclaim as a leader in the world. But then we didn't get back for 60 years, I said. Sunk cost again. The Chinese are a proud people, most competitive. For a century now, we have led in all things, but especially robotics. Maybe Metabots cognizers are equal to our best associates. Small differences only. He held his thumb and forefinger a few centimeters apart. But the Ne Ren are unique in the history of robotics. He spread both his hands apart with a triumphant grin. HA wins the race to build the most human robot. Value is making the old dream real. So tell the world what you've done. A good plan, only Shenzhen has doubts. Will Ne Ren represent HA or themselves? They have their own ideas about who they are. The accessory opened the door. Your lift is here. What took 5 minutes in a lift bot would have taken an hour had we tried to walk. We passed through the noise and fragrance of the restaurant's main dining area. Dean Lee took his time to plant and reposition his cane with every step. We settled in a back room opposite each other at a 4-top. There was a steel pot divided in two at the center that was already hot. One side bubbled with a milky broth. The other breathed chili-scented fire from the roiling red soup. Human servers presented platters of the thinnest slices of lamb, beef, and pork, folded beside a variety of greens, some dangerous-looking mushrooms, lotus root, and blocks of tofu. I paid no attention to the tray with pig brain, tripe, and chunks of coagulated duck blood. Dean Lee's associate must have ordered us the long necks of Chongqing gold that were waiting at our table, and as we ate dinner, 3 more rounds appeared. I expected the old man to have difficulty reaching the hot pot, but he leaned and swirled chopsticks into the boiling broth with gusto. For a while, the fate of the Ne Regrette mattered not at all. When our appetites waned and the broths cooled to a simmer, I asked again. So, what's going to happen to them? Best case, Dean Lee set his chopsticks onto a stone rest. They scatter to our subdivisions around the world. Let H.A. find showcase jobs for them. They're very capable. He drained the last of the last beer. That was my recommendation. A life in public relations, I said forlornly. And worst case? No. He looked bleak. The weight of that word crushed all conversation. We both looked away from the remains of our meal. In the main room, I could hear happy diners chirping. They could be immortal, he said, shaking melancholy away. Their memories, at least. The bodies will break down, but with quantizing and transfer of cognitive implants, they could go on in new ones. Port memory packages from one to the next. Keeping memory, I said. Losing the self. This didn't seem to matter to him. Very compact package, their memory. He was suddenly enthusiastic. They created new compression algorithms, so no need for the cloud. He waved an airy hand at the ceiling. Such a clever spin-off. He was tipsy. There should have been more. Immortality? I was still thinking about what he'd said. Do you envy them for that? I was a little buzzed as well, or I never would have said that to an old man being pushed out of his life. No. He stared at me across the cooling hot pot. I pity them, having to live in our world. He was having trouble focusing. Should have their own world. There's only 5 of them. 5, yes. Will there be more of them someday? Not up to me. He seemed to shrink him to himself. Or me, I thought. There was nothing more to say, so I stood. Maybe we should go. Yes. He reached for his cane. Liftbot is already waiting. Check is paid. I loaded him into his ride, but decided to walk across campus to clear my head. In the cool of early evening, all the badminton courts were busy. The competitive Chinese. Was their drive to excel really the justification for the Ne Regrette project? It made no sense as a business proposition, but China had its own ideas about capitalism. Human robots. Robot humans. Zhusha would have laughed at the notion, but then she'd had nothing but scorn for Metabot's Sexbot subsidiaries. She used to tease me that my porn money paid for my research, but China sold twice as many Sexbots as Metabot. Nobody was on the soccer pitch, so I cut across. And what had Dean Lee meant by that crack about falling in love? Must have been drunk or crazy. He seemed so frail, but maybe that was an act. Claimed he only invited me because Fu Guangzhou had asked, but he could have said no. Should have. After all, I worked for Metabot, the competition. I climbed to the entrance of the Joyful Stay Hotel. What did these people want from me? Laura waved as I pushed through the hotel's revolving front door, and I was thrillingly surprised to see her. But what was she wearing? The dress was blue floral lace with a lighter base layer beneath. Bare arms, hem brushing the knees. The high collar gracefully accented her neck. Until then, she had worn the robot t-shirt for identification, but this elegant look transformed her. I'd complained to Dean Lee that the Ne Regrette were too beautiful, but now I felt the force of their attraction. Laurel, I lurched across the lobby. Oh, I'm so glad you're here, I said, and then I was babbling. But are you all right? We missed you at the meeting with Dean Lee, but Look at you. Where'd you get that dress? I copied a picture, and Fu Guangzhou designed it. She turned this way and that. You like it? Yes, very much. I was having trouble bearing up under the weight of 4 beers. What are you doing here? Your flight is at 11:45. Zhongbei Airport is 2 hours away, so you leave tomorrow at 8:30. Time will be short. Coffee, breakfast. Go. Don't worry. All the Niran will be there to wave you away. Right. Only I didn't care about tomorrow. But why are you here? She shuffled her feet shyly. I wanted my own goodbye. That's good. I was grinning like a fool. Very good. I'm so glad, but are you all right? The transplant took too long, but no problem. Barely an itch. I realized how awkward we looked standing in the middle of the deserted lobby. We couldn't stay here, but she couldn't very well go to Happy Table or Home Original Chicken dressed like that. Do you want to come up to my room? As the door snicked shut, I felt so disoriented that I decided she needed a tour. We passed through the bedroom for a peek into the large bathroom, and she commented with polite appreciation that I had both a tub and a shower. She wasn't interested in the kitchenette, didn't care about the snack printer. I considered sitting with her at the round dining table for 2, but she moved to the couch with purpose. We settled in front of the picture window. Lights climbed halfway up the slope of Gujian Mountain, but Xingyun Temple at the peak was swallowed by the night and the clouds. Something you said my first night here. I began and lost focus, struck by how elegant and compact Laurel was sitting on the far side of the couch. Her knees swiveled just slightly toward me, her body poised, hands relaxed in her lap. About antipathy and affinity, she gave me a sly smirk. No, I gathered myself. You asked if I came here because I was worried about the Niren. I didn't know what that meant, but I spoke with Dean Lee today, and now I think I do. Her expression darkened. They are very concerned about budgets. You must be ready for changes. The Niren understand our situation, she was resigned. We go wherever helpful associates send us. I steered away from darker possibilities. That makes me sad, Laurel. I'm impressed with how connected the Niren are with one another. Nothing like the programmed interactions of bots with bots. It's new. Exciting. Yes, she clasped her hands together. We are Niren. What you are inventing together is I shouldn't say culture. Call it a way of being that is yours only. If they send you off in different directions, won't that be lost? Mentor Guangzhou has anticipated this. There is a plan. She was confident. Using memory scraping and quantization, we are sharing our memory packages with one another. Also, we have optimized subspeak for greater bandwidth to make our exchanges. I didn't want to believe any of it. Wirelessly? How long does that take? Long, sometimes hours. We are working on that, so I have access to Mentor Guangzhou and Po and Vicky. Wait, all your memories from everyone? How do you know what you know of them? This has been my only body, so I'm still on my first self. My indexing skills need improvement, but all the others have transferred bodies, several times. Mentor Guangzhou, she told me. I needed to keep up, but was distracted by Laurel's stillness, even as I buzzed with fretful excitement. You can't really store packages of memories from all 4 Niren. I can, but with trade-offs. It is the Xiang blurry copy analogy. I store my own information in 32-bit floating point precision, but these shared memories have been quantized to 8-bit or even 4-bit. Access latency is high, so reconstructing them means I need to think much harder and longer than normal. Compression creates distortions and inaccuracies. But at best, you have impressions of the others, not their actual memories. As you say, quantization degrades accuracy. What do you mean, impressions? She frowned. I believe I know them. They're reality. She leaned closer, teasing. Are all your memories exact? I let that pass. Okay, subspeak transfer of quantized memory packages. But if you're scattered all over the world, we're creating a secure transfer portal to encrypted cloud storage. She said this as if it were obvious. I groaned. This was the kind of nightmare scenario that the Amsterdam Treaty was supposed to prevent. Recursive, self-improving bots making technological breakthroughs in service of a secret plan for self-preservation. Call the human-level intelligence compliance cops. Shut Robotics Technology College down. Burn HA to the ground. Pumped with dread at the Ne Ren's audacity, I couldn't sit still anymore. Excuse me a minute, I'll be right. I stood without finishing the sentence and staggered to the kitchen for no good reason, then to the bathroom to find myself in the mirror. The situation cried for human oversight, but the man who gazed back at me was ready to risk the AI apocalypse because he wanted beautiful Laurel and the Ne Ren to survive and thrive. Have I upset you, Reed? Laurel called. Mentor Guangzhou said you would want to talk about this. No, I'm fine. I pulled a cover off of a printed cup by the sink and filled it from the faucet. Just getting a drink of water. If you have other questions, please ask them. Only 100, I thought, and 1,000 worries. No, I decided that whatever I was going to do about the Ne Ren, I wasn't going to do it that night. Good. Because there is something I want to ask you. Would you teach me to kiss? I stumbled out of the bathroom. She was still on the couch, twisted to watch me over her shoulder. I'd hoped it was a joke, but her innocent smile told me that it wasn't. What? I had too many bad thoughts, no good words. I know that isn't a very Chinese thing to ask. We could hug if you would rather. I circled back to the couch and sat as far from her as I could be, with Zhuzha between us. But I feel a strong affinity for you, Reed, and it is proper to experience it as humans do. I know that kissing suggests sexual foreplay, but since we are incapable of that intimacy, I am not worried. Okay. That was something to say. Friends kiss, families kiss. In France, they do a double kiss. Ne bisou, I said. A kiss can be complete in itself. She was so endearingly earnest. More is not necessary. Zhuzha faded as I sorted how I felt and what I should do. I decided on honesty. I have an affinity for you too, Laurel, I said. Affection, actually. I hadn't understood that before. How is it said? Her expression crumpled. Tear of joy? Then she scolded me. You should not make me want to cry. You know I can't. Sorry. Then are we agreed to kiss? I hesitated so long that I assented with my silence. This was definitely crazy and probably a mistake, but it had been decades since I dared do anything so reckless. And in the moment, I'd found something I'd lost since Zhuzha died. She scooted over to me. This is what I know, she said. The lips touch. There might be something with the mouth or the tongue. I held up both hands to stop her. Her naivete was so absurd that I had to laugh. One step at a time. Lips first. I leaned in. Her face was so big, so bright. I felt just the slightest graze, a gentle pressure, and I pulled away abruptly. Her lips were cold. What? She said, alarmed. I shivered and recalibrated. No, that was fine. It's just been a while for me. That was a lie. The truth was that I just kissed a robot. I'd never been with a sex bot, but everybody knew they ran at least at human standard temperature, if not hotter. A working Ne Ren had a different purpose and design. Everything about Laurel, her hands, her skin, her mouth would feel wrong. Room temperature, corpse cool, so unlike my dead wife's. But I reminded myself again to stop thinking about her. Again, I said, concentrate on the breath, lips slightly open. I was prepared this time. We held a chaste and very dull kiss for several seconds. When we separated, Laurel seemed disappointed. I am confused, she said. It feels like eating, but without the taste. I should have given up then, but I was frustrated. Right. This time you will taste something. Let's say a drink you enjoy. What drink? Something you've already tasted, I repeated slowly. That you like. That tickles. Bubble tea, coffee, Swan Mei Tang, Coke Zero? You're telling me to hallucinate? She was horrified. Do you trust me? Her expression was momentarily blank, as if nobody was home or ever had been. Then she twitched back onto the couch with me. Always, she said. Then under no circumstances verify your data. I pressed my palm to her cold cheek. Believe, and it will be. Kissing is more in the mind than in the body. And this time, close your eyes. Our lips touched and pressed. Sip, I whispered, opening my mouth. Sip. It sounded like a hiss. Her lips parted. I breathed the word into her mouth. Sip. I sensed her receiving it. Yes. Her eyes popped open. Yes, it was. Don't say it. I pulled away and pressed my finger to her lips. That's yours. Keep it to yourself. She looked unsure, then nodded. We stayed like that for some time, close enough to come together, but just smiling. And that's kissing, I said finally. Thank you, Reed. She slid away to her side of the couch. For all the Ne Regrette. For all? Just then I realized just how deluded I was. Hadn't she just told me that they were sharing memory packages with one another? Yes. Mentor Guangzhou says this connection is one we needed to experience, and that you might be the one we could ask for such a kind favor. Me? Why me? Because you would be leaving us, going back to your other life as famous Professor Reed Cheng. I'm not very famous, I said weakly. And because she believes you would keep our secrets. All of our secrets. Not because you have an affinity for me? I was embarrassed to hear myself ask this. I do, Reed. Strong affinity for you. Affection, as you say. I like you more than any human I know, even though you do not believe that Ne Regrette can like. Or maybe you do now. I hope so. We stared at each other, and I could tell she was trying desperately to see me, but I didn't want to be seen just then. I'm tired, Laurel, I said. I've heard too much, said too much, and drunk too much tonight. I'll see you tomorrow. My last morning in Xizang was foggy and cool. The mountain was just a whisper of green against the gray sky. I bumped my carry-on bag through the lobby door to wait for Laurel on the steps overlooking the commercial strip. From down the street came the annoying pulse of a jackhammer and the keening alert of a truck backing up. The road repair crew was already on the job, 2 men, a woman, and 3 associates. This early and in this weather? I hope the humans had gotten a better night's sleep than I had. My visit to the college had passed in an instant. Standing there, I imagined myself climbing out of the airport lift bot, dragging the same overloaded bag and stumbling into trouble. Over the last few days, I'd repeatedly fallen into the anthropomorphism trap. I'd mapped my own humanity onto the Ne Regrette and decided that I could tell what they were thinking and feeling. This was despite my 80 years in robotics and how many false starts and disputed claims that artificial intelligences were people. If the world knew what was happening here, the experiment would be immediately shut down. Not because the Ne Regrette had failed, but because they had succeeded beyond all expectation. But I didn't feel threatened by what these 5 frail creatures were doing. I wanted to believe Dean Lee was right, that they were both marvelous and harmless. Still, I had spent the night in restless debate. For a while, I'd managed to convince myself that Laurel's affection was not only real, but meaningful. After all, she and the Ne Regrette had trusted me with their secrets. Then later, I would remember how they had manipulated me. I was an easy target because I was lonely and more than a little lost after Zhuzha's death. But what did they have to gain by using me? I was surprised to see Fu Guangzhou and not Laurel marching down the street, elbows cocked precisely, arms pumping. I hadn't seen her in a hurry since that first day. Precision in her stride was spoiled by her long ponytail, which bounced awkwardly against a backpack. "Soon, it will be time for you to leave," she said, unslinging it. Sorry. The others are waiting for you at breakfast. But first, it is proper to offer a gift to celebrate your visit to the Ne Regrette." She knelt to open the flap. "That is very kind, Ne Regrette Fu Guangzhou, but I can't accept. You and the Ne Regrette have already shared so much in the last few days. Refusing the gift at first is customary in China, but I really didn't want this one. For one thing, I was already lugging too much unwelcome swag." "You have done the Ne Regrette great honor with your presence, Professor Reed Cheng," she said, emphasizing the necessity of accepting with more formal speech. The gift was flat and about a half-meter square, wrapped in red and gold paper and bound by a gold ribbon tied in a bow. She offered it to me in the traditional way, holding it in front of her with both hands. It felt like a book or maybe a lacquer tray, although it was heavier than expected. "Thank you." I accepted it in the same way. "I appreciate the trust you placed in me." I scrutinized her for a reaction. Did she feel guilty about the ruse the Ne Regrette had played? She met my gaze with confidence. "Our friendship is proper and harmonious." Then she peered at my bag with concern. "But how will you carry it home?" "I'll find room." I unzipped the front pocket, extracted my rain jacket, and put it on. I managed to wiggle the package into the tight free space, although the end still stuck out. I'll have to repack at the airport. We met the others outside the Wanwu noodle brunch. They were all wearing their robot t-shirts. Laurel handed me my latte with 2 hands. "As always," she said sorrowfully. "But for the last time." "Go with Reed, student Guiying," Fu Guangzhou said. "Order breakfast. The Ne Regrette will wait outside." "Actually," I said, "I'm not hungry. I should just leave. I can eat at the airport." "No long goodbyes," Fu Guangzhou nodded, as if she had expected this. "A lift bot is already coming." Then she marshaled the 4 Ne Regrette into a line in front of me like troops for inspection. "Ne Regrette request hugs," she said. I gave a shaky laugh. "Hugs?" Vicky, closest to me, spread her arms. "It is a proper gesture of affection, Reed." I set my coffee on the sidewalk and embraced each of them in turn. They were terrible at hugging. Their grip was slack, and I had to signal them with a twitch to disengage. Laurel was the last of the 4. As we parted, she stood on tiptoes and gave me quick pecks to either cheek. "Bisous, bisous," she murmured. Fu Guangzhou watched with approval, standing to one side. I don't think she expected me to offer her a hug, but she reluctantly stepped into my embrace. "The gift," she whispered. "Thank you." That confused me. I hadn't given them any gift, but this wasn't the first time I had trouble understanding her. I repacked my bag on the ride to Zhongbei Airport. When I opened Fu Guangzhou's gift, I was pleased to discover it was the yellow painting from Dean Lee's office. She had replaced the original frame with one sturdy and thick enough to protect the canvas from being damaged in my bag. Once again, I admired her technique for suggesting how the green of the forest outside could become the yellow glow that suffused the lonely room. I turned it over and read the back. "To Professor Reed Cheng, our affinity mate, remember us. Ne Regrette Zheng Weifeng, Ne Regrette Teng Muchen, Ne Regrette Kai Lian, Ne Regrette Dong Guiying, Ne Regrette Fu Guangzhou." I needed to make enough room for it. The Li Bai book of Chinese poetry was on top of the pile of gifts. I hesitated, but only for a moment. Jusha was the one who read poetry. I left it on a chair in the lobby near the Cathay Pacific desk at the airport. There was no trouble checking in and passing the security scan. With more than an hour before my flight to Heathrow, I looked for some breakfast in the first-class lounge. I browsed a nice array of Western and Chinese food, and I got a coffee, a banana, a bran muffin, and a small plate of 4 wontons. After I ate, I unzipped the front pocket of my bag to get my laptop out, but saw the painting. Oh, I was already missing the Niren. As I pulled it out, scattered memories of these last days coalesced. Dean Lee chortling over how compact the Niren's memory package was. I swallowed, throat suddenly tight. Small enough to fit in this incongruously thick frame? How matter-of-fact Fu Guangzhou had sounded when she explained how memory transfer created her new self and her new body. Laurel claiming that all of them had exchanged all of their memories and thanking me for keeping their secrets. What if I hadn't misheard Fu Guangzhou? Maybe the gift wasn't the painting, but the frame loaded with the quantized version of the Niren, the frame that had already gone through security and was cleared for my flight to London? Was stewardship of it the gift I was to give the Niren? And then I remembered Dean Lee musing that they could be immortal. Remember us. I lost track of time while I sat in the shocking realization that I might be smuggling human-level intelligences out of China. What was I supposed to do with them? Maybe nothing. Maybe just keep them for the time being, waiting to see what HA decides about the Niren. My affinity mates. Or I could go back to Metabot, tell them some, but not all of what I'd learned in Xisheng. And then I looked up when a little Chinese girl in a pink panda t-shirt said something in Mandarin. She stood too close to me, brazenly staring at the painting of the empty room on my lap, as if trying to see what was so important. Sorry, I said. I don't speak. She pointed at the painting and said, Where are all the people? What are your thoughts on the story? You can send me an email. I'm Kate@clarksworldmagazine.com, and that is Clark with an E. I hope you enjoyed this one. And as I said, please go back and listen or read all of James Patrick Kelly's other stories we have in Clarkesworld. We have a few more stories left for you for the month of January. I do hope you'll come back and listen, should you so choose. And until then, my dear listener, I bid you a very fond and hopefully very temporary farewell.